October 21st, Canadians will judge the Liberals on those broken promises. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We'll interrupt now for a question period, but the honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby will have 3 minutes and 50 seconds coming to him when we return, and we'll take up the questions then. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Regina Louvain.
Mr. Speaker, last week we lost one of Saskatchewan's great pioneers for Medicare. Betsy Burry served in the Royal Canadian Air Force in World War II before becoming active in the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation. She was a founding member of the Saskatoon Community Clinic, which continued to provide health care after doctors withdrew their services in opposition to the CCF government's Medicare plan. She was predeceased by her husband, John Burry, one of the doctors from the British National Health Service who came to Saskatchewan in support of Medicare. While the Burrys and other Saskatchewan people succeeded in bringing public health care to Canada, their work remains incomplete. The best tribute we can pay them is to continue building our public system to include prescription drugs, dental care, and all health services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, everyone knows someone that has struggled with fertility issues, yet speaking about infertility is still quite taboo in our society. Starting later this month, Canadians will have an opportunity to highlight the need to break the stigma and share their story with others during Canadian Infertility Awareness Week. Thank you to Fertility Matters, the national organization that empowers Canadians to help reach their reproductive health goals, for their leadership and bringing awareness to this important issue. En tant que parent du
As sponsor of Bill C-404, an act to amend the Assisted Human Reproduction Act to help more Canadians have their own child, I believe that we must devote more attention to this conversation.
Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to join me in encouraging all Canadians who have experienced difficulty in building their families to share their stories and help remove the stigma surrounding their struggles. Thank you.
The honourable member for Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I want to take a moment today to express my best wishes to everyone in Canada and around the world celebrating Baisakhi. Baisakhi is the most celebrated day in the Sikh faith. We honor this creation of Khalsa by spending quality time with family and friends. This year also marked the 100th anniversary of the Amritsar massacre. Mr. Speaker, the massacre of an estimated 1,000 civilians at Jallianwala Bagh, a public garden where they had gathered for a peaceful protest on April 13, 1919, a very devastating day. I also want to take this opportunity to invite all my colleagues and friends to a Baisakhi celebration here on Parliament Hill on May 12th. I hope to see you all there. I wish everyone a safe and joyful holiday. Baisakhi diyan lakh lakh badaiyan. Happy Baisakhi. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, with the start of Christian Holy Week upon us, I'd like to first recognize Monsignor Dennis Noon, who recently had announced his plans to retire after serving as pastor of the Basilica of Our Lady Immaculate for 16 years. The entire Christian community in Guelph and across Canada continues to do incredible work to build up our communities. Each Sunday after attending church at my home parish of Holy Rosary, I visit another faith community in my riding. I'm always impressed with the volunteers supporting vulnerable people, providing meals, clothing, or housing, welcoming refugees, looking out for seniors, providing summer camps for our children and our youth to gain work experience. Each faith community has its own personality, but its foundation is always centered on a vision to do good work and to bring people together. At this time of year, Christians reflect on where they are on their faith journey and how they can do better in the year ahead, following the call to love one another. In that same spirit, Mr. Speaker, I want to wish Guelphites and Canadians a very happy Easter.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Today, students are demonstrating again in Montreal in Parc Jean-Masse. What are they asking for? They're asking us to stop focusing on in important matters and to focus on the most important one, global warming. They've asked us to stop squabbling. They are asking us to take a stand, to work together, to finally agree that we are going to meet our greenhouse gas emissions targets. That's what they expect of us. The NDP, the Bloc, the Green Party, we've come together to ask the leaders of the other two parties to sit down with us to agree on the fact that we will meet our greenhouse gas targets, reduction targets. We have international commitments in this regard. We need to respect them. This is what the students are asking for. This is our responsibility here to agree to the fact that it's not if we're going to meet these targets, but how we are going to do so in the next campaign. Take a stand for your children.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect their government to take aggressive action on climate change. A new report indicates Canada is warming at twice the global rate. As climate change escalates, we face strong and more unpredictable weather events. Deadly wildfires have devastated communities in British Columbia, Alberta, south of us in California, and across the Pacific in China. Unprecedented drought have struck Africa and the Middle East. Just recently, massive flooding has taken over 70 lives in Golestan, Fars, Khuzestan, and Lorestan provinces in Iran. An international effort is currently underway to provide relief to those affected by this ongoing crisis. As well, I encourage everyone to donate to Canadian Red Cross to support their important life-saving work. We have a plan to address climate change, Mr. Speaker. We are putting a price on pollution, investing in green technology, and working with the international community to face one of the greatest challenges of our time. Canada is doing its part. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix-Beauport. Today, I rise to pay tribute to a woman who taught me everything I know about life, people, selflessness, a tiny woman, but an exceptionally great one, my mother. Last December, on the eve of her 88th birthday, she closed her eyes on the winter as it raged, tired of fighting her memory loss. Watching someone we love dearly lose bits and pieces of their memory is very difficult. Alzheimer's is incomprehensible. She for years was my guiding light. She became a shadow of herself. I then had to become her guide and her light. The mother-daughter times we shared over the years will forever remain in my memory. Despite her disease, all of those moments are unique for me. Mom, you went to join your man, your dancer, your friend, your lover, my father, Justin. Soar, my angel, soar. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Agriculture, as well as the men and women behind our food security, are at the heart of what defines Canada and have been since its creation. Mr. Normand Gagnon, a grain farmer in the riding of Saint-Jean, received the Coup de Chapeau Prize at the AgriStar Gala on April 8th. This award is more than well-deserved. It reflects the commitment and support provided by Mr. Gagnon and his spouse, Louise. Collaborators, over a long period of time, Normand and I worked together on an ethanol plant in Quebec. Defending and promoting farming are, for Normand, what have been at the heart of his commitment over the past 40 years. Congratulations, Normand, for this tribute. Continue to passionately defend our noble profession. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The hockey playoffs are on, and I couldn't not talk about the Les Sages Hockey League on the South Shore that's holding the 16th annual tournament in the Gaétan Boucher Sports Centre in Saint-Hubert. This league is very specific and unique. It's made up of players who are 70 years of age and older. Several players are, in fact, 80, and the oldest is 92. And you did hear me correctly, Mr. Speaker, 92. This year, no fewer than 24 teams, primarily from Ontario and Quebec, are participating in the 16th edition. It's a much sought-after tournament and was a success once again. I'd like to use my opportunity in the House to honor all these men to remain young, active, and in good health. They've decided to live their passion, playing hockey, and I hope that they will continue to do so for many years to come.
Melville.
Even as Africa, Asia, and the Middle East are intensifying persecution against Christians, our government and media stay mostly silent. In this past year alone, 4,136 Christians were killed for their faith, 2,625 detained without trial, and 1,266 places of worship attacked. We must not take for granted the religious freedoms that our democracy provides. As Christians celebrate this Easter, we remember when Christ was crucified. He did what none of us could do. He paid the price for our sins. Then he rose from the dead to stand in the gap between our personal inability to save ourselves and our holy, just, and loving God. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. It is by grace that you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It's a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. Easter blessings today to all Christians that will be celebrating all over the world.
The Honourable Member for London West.
Our government understands that no relationship is more important than the one we have with Indigenous peoples. To start rebuilding this relationship, we made clear our commitment to implementing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations. As part of the report, there was a call to action for greater support to Indigenous sport. That's why just yesterday, the Minister of Science and Sport was in St. Catharines to announce that our government will be providing $1.7 million to add box lacrosse to the 2021 Canada Summer Games taking place in Niagara. Lacrosse is a sport that is deeply ingrained in the culture and tradition of the Indigenous people. As many in this House know, adding lacrosse to these games is a major milestone, especially considering it's also our national summer sport. I can't wait to see lacrosse at the 2021 Canada Summer Games. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Chantilly, La Petite Nation. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to highlight the exceptional record of a man who hails from Thurso, located in my magnificent riding of Argenteuil, La Petite Nation. I'm referring to the Flower, Mr. Guy Lafleur, a true hockey legend. He was recently elected best player in the history of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League at the Gala des Rondelles d'Or in Quebec City. And when he played for the team, he was exceptional with the Remparts de Québec. He scored totaled 379 points, including 233 goals, and led the team to winning the Memorial Cup in 1971. And that's in addition to his exceptional record as a hockey star. He is a model of perseverance and passion for all young athletes in Quebec. Guy.
Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
People in my riding have been waiting 16 months for the Liberal government to do something to restore the border crossing at Sombra. We need $2 million for that. And we've been waiting 4 years for the government to find $6 million to fund a project which will create 3,000 well-paying jobs in my community. We've waited 4 years for the government to address high-speed internet gaps in my riding. So you can imagine my outrage when I find out the Environment Minister gave $12 million taxpayer dollars to Loblaws, a company that made a $3 billion profit last year. While small businesses like JDW Trucking in Sarnia and many other Canadians are struggling to pay this Liberal carbon tax, the Environment Minister is taking from the poor to give to the rich. Instead of fridges for the wealthy, how about jobs and border crossings in Sarnia-Lambton?
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Cancer Society has launched its annual Daffodil campaign to raise funds to support its life-changing programs, groundbreaking research, and important advocacy efforts as we all work towards the goal of eradicating cancer. This year's campaign in particular meaningful to me as a cancer survivor. Cancer can strike us or a loved one at any time and without warning. Young or old, whatever your race or gender, no matter how active and healthy you are, cancer does not discriminate. I have seen firsthand the impact a cancer diagnosis has not only on the patients, but on their family, their colleagues, and their community. The support organizations such as the Canadian Cancer Society provide is invaluable. I encourage my colleagues and all Canadians to support the efforts of the Canadian Cancer Society and wear their daffodil with pride. Together, we can make cancer history.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. I'm happy to highlight the success of the Entrepreneur Project. Its awards ceremony was March 7th. Gilles Sigouin joined forces with the Centre de Femmes Ainsi Soit-Elle, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Chambly, as well as Luma Studio, to organize this competition to showcase women entrepreneurs. Congratulations to the winners.
Sylvie Racine, Julia Girard-Desbiens, Karine Thibault, Louise et Nancy Lasselle, Georgette Allary, Annick Cormier et Sandrine Milland.
We know that the power imbalance between men and women contributes to inequalities as well, unfortunately, as to violence and aggression. For these reasons, I'm very proud to support and shed light on these women in business. A special thanks to José Daigle, not only for the success of this competition, but all of the work she does at the Centre Ainsi Soit-Elle. Mr. Speaker, if you're in Chambly at Délire et Délices, try the Ainsi Soit-Elle beer. It's not only good, but the profits go to the Women's Centre. Congratulations to all and to all organizers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Speaker, this past Sunday I was honored to attend the Armenian Genocide commemoration in Cambridge. Between 1915 and 1923, millions of Armenians were subjected to unspeakable suffering, and approximately 1.5 million Armenians died at the hands of the Ottoman Empire. Although 104 years have passed, the horror of the Armenian genocide has not diminished. On April 24, thousands of Armenians will gather in Yerevan to remember and to commemorate the lives lost. I've had the privilege of meeting Canadians of Armenian descent who contribute so much to my home community of the Waterloo region and to this great country. I look forward to joining fellow Canadians at the Armenian Genocide commemoration in North York later this month. Remembering the Armenian genocide should motivate us all to continue bridge-building initiatives to do everything in our power to ensure that such a terrible tragedy never happens again. We will remember.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charles-le-Moyne. Mr. Speaker, the 16th edition of the Lassonde Tyler Hockey Tournament is wrapping up today at the Gaétan Boucher Sports Centre in my riding of Longueuil-Charles-le-Moyne. This is a unique tournament in North America because it's exclusively reserved for seniors 70 years of age and older. The Les Sages de la Rive-Sud Hockey League organizes this sporting event every year, and this year it includes 24 teams, including 4 teams of players over 80.
The tournament is to enable seniors 70 years of age and older to play a sport they enjoy, stay active and healthy, and develop new friendships. This year's event hosts teams from across Quebec and Ontario. The profits generated will go to supporting the Alzheimer's Society of the South Shore. Congratulations to the organizers and participants of the tournament, and long life to the Les Sages de la Rive-Sud Hockey League. Thank you.
Happy birthday, madame.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Teddy Roosevelt said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick and you will go far." The Prime Minister making big, bold threats of a lawsuit and then hiding from following through. He is roaring loudly and carrying a small twig. Now, I'm announcing today on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition, he is setting a deadline for the Prime Minister to follow through on his threat. Monday at midnight. Will they meet the deadline, or will the Prime Minister just run for cover?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, let me just share a little bit of history. The Minister of Innovation had put the Leader of the Official Opposition on notice in December because he had used words that were not judicious and should not have been used. He used them in the House. We challenged him to use them outside the House. He tried it outside the House, was served notice, and all of a sudden, like magic, those tweets disappeared. Those online press releases disappeared. Mr. Speaker, this happened in February, and now in March, the Prime Minister served him notice. And like magic, those tweets disappeared.
Honourable member for Carleton.
The letter of threat that the Prime Minister sent the official opposition included a bunch of different objectionable claims that he said the Conservative leader had made. So the Conservative leader took the same letter, walked outside, repeated every single allegation. The Prime Minister, if he doesn't believe that the leader of the opposition was telling the truth, could take action, but he has to do so quickly under the principle of libel law that you have to move as soon as reasonably possible. So when will he live up to his bold threats, or will he simply back down and hide?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
December, the Leader of the Official Opposition deleted tweets, retracted messaging. In February, the Leader of the Official Opposition deleted tweets, retracted messaging. In March, the Leader of the Official Opposition deleted tweets, retracted messaging. They change their messaging and then they go outside. But most recently, Mr. Speaker, because the Conservatives have a history of misleading Canadians, they wanted to have a fundraiser. They wanted a private fundraiser to talk about the privatization of healthcare. You know what today, Mr. Speaker? They have now changed the parameters of that fundraiser. Maybe they'll delete it entirely. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
They really want to talk about health care and fundraisers? This from a party whose leader had a $1,500 a plate fundraiser and threw out of the room to cackles of laughter an Aboriginal protester angry about the mercury poisoning that occurred in a First Nations community. We will take no lessons from this Prime Minister on health care and fundraisers. Instead of political attacks and hypocrisy, why won't they stand up behind their words and follow?
Honourable member for the
Honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent.
The Honourable Government House Leader is going to want to respond to that.
I know you couldn't find the question in there, but that is what they mislead Canadians and call a question. But, Mr. Speaker, it's important because it's a very important matter, and the Prime Minister did apologize and accept responsibility. But what's more important, actually, when it comes to that issue, Mr. Speaker, is that when it comes to the fundraisers that we hold, they are in public. The media is present. Anyone who lobbies the Prime Minister is not able to attend because we have even stricter rules when it comes to fundraising. And we had to bring the Conservatives kicking and screaming along because when it came to the fundraiser, the future finance dream minister wanted to have.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, it's strange to see the Liberal Party, who for the last 2 months has been unable to manage this crisis, and then to see the Prime Minister have this idea. He decided to try to sue the Leader of the Official Opposition. But, Mr. Speaker, not only did our leader not move at all, he even repeated and republished exactly what he had said before. So now we're just waiting for the trial. Will the Prime Minister do what he said, or on the contrary, will he do what he normally does and just have a lot of empty rhetoric? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we have a lot to say. And that is exactly why we have an economy that is working today. We know that Canadians are better off today than there were under the 10 years of the Stephen Harper government. But the member across the way is asking questions, even though he knows very well that the Leader of the Opposition changed the words that he used. But before doing that, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition deleted the statements that he had made because he knew that he was continuing to mislead Canadians. And that is unacceptable. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. What's unacceptable, Mr. Speaker, is a Prime Minister who shows contempt to Canadians by doing one thing and saying another. 2 months ago when the Globe and Mail broke the story of this scandal, the Prime Minister said the very next day, that's totally false. There have been 4 resignations since then. Another thing the Prime Minister said is, I was never informed of any danger of political interference. He said that until 2 weeks ago in this House, he admitted that in fact he had been informed on September 17th. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister carry out his threat of legal action, and if so, when? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we know that Canadians need to hear the truth. That's exactly why the Prime Minister waived solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidence, and that's exactly why all of the facts are now public. But the Conservatives continue to mislead Canadians, and that's unacceptable. Now, the member across the way is doing the same. He is following in the footsteps of his leader. But I think we need to show some respect for Canadians. We know that they've heard the truth. All of the facts are public, and Canadians can make their choice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for New Westminster, Burnaby.
Canadians are increasingly worried about the political interference by this Prime Minister and his office in our independent justice system. But instead of reassuring them, this Liberal government continues to try to cover up their wrongdoing and scandal. Now, Canadians know there was inappropriate pressure on our justice system for their rich Liberal friends. The OECD's anti-bribery unit is also paying attention. They put Canada on notice in a letter to the NDP that they're watching what the Liberals are doing. So will Liberals just do what's right, reassure the OECD and Canadians, and call a public inquiry now?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, in March, the Minister spoke with the chair of the OECD Working Group, and she confirmed to him that we are fully committed to cooperating with the good work that they do. Obviously, we fully support the OECD's work in all such endeavours, and Canada is a strong supporter of the rules-based international order, including the OECD, which is a flagship organization. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, if they respected the OECD, they wouldn't have shut down the Justice Committee investigation. Now, the Liberals are trying to change the channel on their interference scandal, but people still want to know the whole truth about the SNC-Lavalin scandal. The government seems to have two sets of rules, one for their buddies and one for everyone else. The cosy relationship between Loblaws and the Liberals is just the latest example of how the Liberal team really works and who they work for. This game has gone on long enough. People have a right to transparency. Will the government finally launch a public inquiry into interference allegations before the next election?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
In March, the Prime Minister talked to the OECD Working Group and confirmed that we are ready to fully cooperate with the excellent work of their team and that we fully support the OECD's work. Canada is a fervent defender of the international rules-based international order, including the OECD. The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, we learned this week that the Minister of Finance is working very closely with big Canadian banks. This is another example of the way that Liberal cronies get special treatment. This Liberal government promised more transparency. They promised they would do politics differently. And they also promised real measures to fight climate change. But what are those measures? Apparently $12 million to one of the richest organizations in this country. They gave $12 million to Loblaws, a lovely gift from the Prime Minister. When will the Liberals finally focus on real priorities instead of the priorities of the rich and privileged? The Honourable Minister for the Environment. Mr. Speaker, I'm always happy to talk about what we're doing to fight climate change. We're putting a price on pollution. We are eliminating, phasing out carbon. We are investing in green technology. And the subject that the member is talking about, he should know that we are investing 25% of that investment to reduce 50,000 cars a year from the road. I think that's a good investment, and we all need to work together to fight climate change. That includes provinces, companies, cities, and everyone.
Westminster, Burnaby.
Well, the Environment Minister should also actually ask Canadians whether they think it's a good idea to give $12 million to a company that made nearly $1 billion in profits last year, all while refusing to pay its staff a fair wage. Now, people across the country are desperate for this government to act on climate change, but instead they see Liberals padding Loblaw's profits. Now, two Loblaw's lobbyists were at a Liberal Cash for Access fundraiser with the Prime Minister and the Environment Environment Minister's senior staff. So Canadians want to know, is that why Loblaws got this sweetheart deal?
Honourable Minister of the Environment.
No, the reason Loblaw got this deal was because there was an open tender process that was open to businesses, communities, big businesses, small businesses, Indigenous peoples. 54 winners. They were based on emission reductions. In this case, in this open, transparent process run by public servants, the winner, we are only putting up 1/4 of the amount of the $48 million, $50,000 reduction emissions. It's like 50,000 vehicles off the road. We should all support that. We should all be looking to work together to tackle climate change.
The Honourable Member for Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Well, Mr. Speaker, everybody knows that the Prime Minister has been misleading Canadians now for over 2 months. He said that the SNC story was false, that no one raised concerns, that he did it for jobs, and yet each one of these statements is a proven falsehood. Then, he foolishly tried to bully the opposition leader into silence by threatening to sue. But the opposition leader has now called this ridiculous bluff. It's the Prime Minister's move. When will we see him in court?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it's important that Canadians know, and I guess members should also be informed, that when people say things that they should not say, there is consequences to that. And what happened is that the leader of the official opposition is using terminologies and making accusations that are inappropriate. And so what we did, Mr. Speaker, is that we won't stand idly by, and Canadians can have confidence. We put him on notice. And really quickly after he received notice, he deleted those tweets. He took a step back from his messaging and now reiterates his new messaging that I guess we helped him discover. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Sarnia Lambton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, our leader has repeated exactly the words that he said in the first place. It's the Prime Minister that has been misleading Canadians. He told them the SNC story was false, and that's not true. Then he said no one raised concerns. Not true. Then he said he did it for jobs. The company says that's not true. The Prime Minister's threat to sue the leader of the opposition is clearly a bluff. If he truly believes he has a case, when will we see him in court?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, they say repetition works, and when it comes to hearing the answer, obviously repetition does not work. So let me remind the honourable member that's more focused on privatizing health care than she is focusing on making sure that we have a universal healthcare system that actually works for all Canadians. That's something that Canadians pride themselves in, but that is not the focus of the dreamy future Minister of Health, as she likes to refer to herself as. So I will remind her that all facts are now public. The Justice Committee meetings took place in public. They took place in public so that witnesses could appear, and the Prime Minister ensured that solicitor-client privilege as well as cabinet confidence was waived.
The
Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lys-Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, it's the Prime Minister himself who misled Canadians. He said that the SNC-Lavalin story was false, but obviously that wasn't true. Then, he said that no one had raised concerns with him. That was also untrue. If he really believes that the truth is defamatory to him, when are we going to see him in court, Mr. Speaker? When? The Honourable Government House Leader. Once again, Mr. Speaker, all of the facts about this subject are public because the Prime Minister waived solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidence. Members who sit on the Justice Committee looked at this issue for 5 weeks, they studied it, and they decided themselves on the outcome. Now, Canadians will know everything about the facts because they're all public. We will always call out the Conservatives if they mislead Canadians, because that's not how we should be doing things in this place. The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte de Beaupré, Île d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, obviously, misleading Canadians isn't what people should be doing, but that's exactly what the Liberal government has been doing from the very beginning of this scandal. The Prime Minister put our leader on notice. Our leader repeated word for word what he said outside this House. Every time that we've asked questions about SNC Lavalin, the Prime Minister changes his story. So, will he act on this?
L'honorable leader du gouvernement.
The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the member across the way forgot a very little detail, which is that the Prime Minister sent a letter, put the Leader of the Opposition on notice, because he has a history of misleading Canadians. We don't think that this is the way things should be done, so the Prime Minister sent a letter to the Leader of the Opposition, and then the Leader of the Opposition must have read the letter, and then deleted his online statements and deleted the tweets. I think that he and his team then changed the words that were used, and now those are the words he's repeating.
Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has been misleading Canadians for months now. That's nothing new for this Prime Minister with his track record of 4 ethical breaches. Now he has the audacity to threaten the opposition leader with a lawsuit for speaking the truth. But the opposition leader won't be intimidated. When will the Prime Minister put his money where his mouth is and meet the opposition leader in court?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we should have confidence in our institutions and the court of law, and no one should be intimidated because we know that the rule of law in Canada is intact. And that's exactly why when the Leader of the Official Opposition received a notice from the Prime Minister, he quickly erased his tweets, he erased his online statements, and then he chose better words. And that probably was the right thing to do, and now they continue to repeat those words. But, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have a history of misleading Canadians. This is now new terminology that they are echoing from us, and they did it in December, they did it in February, now they just did it in March. But most recently, they sent out this publicly funded tax booklet, and they forgot to talk about the climate action incentive, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, we know the Liberals are obsessed with Twitter. They've started diplomatic feuds on Twitter. They've damaged the integrity of our immigration system on Twitter. They've even praised dictators on Twitter. But this isn't about Twitter. This is about the opposition leader's March 29th statement. That's why he repeated every word from that statement inside and outside the chamber. So when will the Prime Minister meet the opposition leader in court, or should I just check his Twitter?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we know that members who want to be in the Conservatives benches have to follow their leader. They're not allowed to speak out of turn. So I encourage him to follow his leader on Twitter so that he can maintain that speed. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, what is clear is that Conservatives are focused on...
Order. The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes asked a question, and the Honourable Government House Leader was answering it, and I'm having a hard time hearing the answer. I'm sure the Honourable Member is as well, so I want to ask everyone to maybe just show a little politeness. I notice a lot of students watching today, and we want to set an example for them. We don't want to act out of line. The Honourable Government House Leader has 18 seconds left.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I will just finish by saying that the Conservatives will remain focused on us, but we will remain focused on Canadians because that's exactly who we are here to serve. And the member who occupied that seat prior to that member was actually a member of the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians, and we just actually tabled the report for the first time. It was dedicated to him.
The Honourable Member for Desnete, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Survivors of the Isle of Cross and Timber Bay boarding schools are seeking justice from this government. When they were in opposition, the Liberals wanted justice for Métis survivors from northern Saskatchewan, but they did nothing to provide compensation or justice since they formed government. Métis people and survivors of boarding schools don't want to wait for another election to get justice. Will the Liberals commit today to do the right thing for survivors from the Isle of Cross and Timber Bay boarding schools?
Come on. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member opposite for her advocacy, her relentless advocacy in this matter, as well as her colleague from Abitibi, Nunavik, James Bay EU. This is obviously a matter that is under advisement with the department. It is a matter that we take very seriously. And I hope to come back to the House with further clarification on the matter. Thank you.
The honourable member for Desnete, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Speaker, we are just weeks away from Kashechewan First Nations annual evacuation. The dike wall could fail, causing catastrophic damage to the community. This community has been waiting for funding for relocation to higher ground for years. The Liberal budget gave nothing to the community, and they're getting desperate. This is not a nation-to-nation relationship. When will the Liberals stop playing games with the lives of Kashechewan's people and fund their relocation?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for her question. Our government recognizes the threat of flooding during the spring breakup is an ongoing reality for the First Nation of Kashechewan. Our commitment to a long-term relocation plan has not wavered, it has not changed. In the meantime, we've made significant progress on priorities such as the new modular school, which will be installed in September of this year. We are currently working with the First Nation to monitor the threat of flooding, to conduct preliminary flood mitigation, and prepare a smooth transition to the host communities.
Member for York Simcoe.
Here. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has threatened to sue the Leader of the Opposition. His lawyer objects to her claim that the Clerk of the Privy Council pressured her, the former Attorney General, and made it clear that her job was on the line. Canadians heard the Clerk of the Privy Council in his own words. They know this statement to be true. When will the Prime Minister allow this court case to begin so the truth can be revealed?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I have answered that question now on numerous occasions, and I do believe that one day we will actually be in this House debating policies that actually have impacts on Canadians. And so I can actually share that when it comes to our plan, we have seen 950,000 jobs created by Canadians. We know that over 800,000 children have been lifted out of poverty. We know almost 300,000 children have been lifted out of poverty because of the Canada Child tax-free benefit, measures that the Conservatives continue to vote against. We know that the Conservatives have no plan for the environment. We know the Conservatives have no plan for the environment. The only plan they have is to mislead Canadians, and that really shouldn't be the competition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Markham Unionville.
Mr. Speaker, for months the Prime Minister has been trying to keep the truth from Canadians. And now he's threatening lawsuit, try to silence his opponents. It won't work. Canadians want the Prime Minister to present his evidence in the court of law. So when will the Prime Minister follow through on his threat? Or is he just talk, no walk?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
So, once again, I've answered that question, but I think what Canadians, what they are prioritizing, or many of them, is it's the economy and the environment. So when it comes to the economy, we know that we have one of the fastest growing economies in the G7, and that's pretty impressive because that means more Canadians are working today than they were in my lifetime. And when it comes to our climate plan, because we know that climate change is real, we actually want to transition to a cleaner, greener economy by making cleaner, greener choices more affordable. And that's why we have the Climate Action Incentive Payment. But that member and his party choose to mislead Canadians by not reminding Canadians that...
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, on March 29th, our leader made an official statement through a press release saying that the Prime Minister led a political interference campaign, that he personally gave orders, and that he denied the truth, and that therefore the Prime Minister had lost the moral authority to govern. Our leader maintains everything that he said in that statement. Mr. Speaker, my question is simple. Will the Prime Minister finally show some courage and do what he said he would do, and commence proceedings so that we can hear the whole truth before the courts?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the member across the way knows well that I've already answered this question. And instead of asking the same question again, I would encourage the member to focus on policies. Policies which will have a real impact on Canadians. The Conservatives are doing everything they can to block a budget that includes important measures for Canadians, such as lower interest rates for student loans, so that Canadians can keep more of their money and more help for first-time homebuyers.
For Saskatoon Grasswood.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's becoming abundantly clear that the thing the Prime Minister fears most is telling the truth. Yes, in open court, he can't shut down the hearings, and he can't threaten the witnesses. Will he commit today, Mr. Speaker, to immediately file his lawsuit and testify in open court about what he did to politically interfere in a criminal trial?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, it's interesting that the member who's from the province of Saskatchewan would rise, and he knows very well that I've answered that question, but Saskatchewan is actually one of the provinces that don't have a provincial climate plan. So to ensure that we can transition to a cleaner, greener economy, the federal government actually has put forward a climate action incentive payment. And families within Saskatchewan actually will be receiving over $600 when they file their taxes this year. And that's actually more than, it will benefit more. 80% of families will actually spend less when it comes to making cleaner, greener choices, because we want to ensure that they make cleaner, greener choices and that they are affordable. So I encourage
the Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, according to breast cancer experts, thousands of Canadian women will die due to this government's new breast cancer screening guidelines. The new guidelines ignore expert advice, disregard the importance of mammograms for women in their 40s, and advise against self-exams. They overlook the benefits of early detection, ignore current data, and are silent on the risks of breast density. Given these grave concerns, will the Liberals halt these guidelines, advise physicians not to follow them, and launch a review under the direction of subject matter experts?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Protecting the health and safety of all Canadians is my top priority. The Canadian Task Force on Preventative Health Care is an independent, arm's-length panel of 15 experts to develop clinical practical guidelines. While the government provided support to the Task Force Breast Cancer Screening Work Group, its decision was totally done independently. As such, these are not official government guidelines. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, steel workers and their families have been having a really rough time lately. They are facing great uncertainty as temporary protection measures are set to expire on April 27th. The Liberals are messing around and are reluctant to keep these safeguards to protect our jobs and avoid the flooding of the market. Instead, they're gifting millions to the Weston family. Time is running out. Steel workers can no longer wait. Mr. Speaker, instead of helping big banks and rich corporations, can the Liberal government finally help out workers and real people? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We are always going to protect Canadians and the interests of our workers. And the unjust tariffs imposed by the U.S., we've established many measures to compensate them, and we're going to continue to work with the steel and aluminum workers to support them through this crisis until these unjust and illegal tariffs are removed. Thank you.
Newmarket.
Mr. Speaker, we know that our country's continued prosperity depends on innovative, hard-working Canadian companies and their ability to access new markets. Increased trade improves overall productivity and creates good-paying jobs for all Canadians. Can the Minister of International Trade Diversification please let the House know what steps are being taken to increase trade opportunities for Canadians from coast to coast to coast?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague from Newmarket Aurora and for the question and for his leadership at the International Trade Committee. Mr. Speaker, consecutive governments talked about trade diversification, but it was only our government that made that a reality. Under our government, we signed and ratified CETA and CPTPP. That is 1.5 billion new customers for our businesses, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Minister announced new measures to help SMEs trade, grow, and create jobs. Mr. Speaker, we're aiming to grow our global exports by 50% by 2025.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. And they won't be able to do so because instead of being at home in their fields, working for the next season, canola farmers are here in Ottawa, sounding the alarm.
China's no longer buying our canola. Saudi Arabia is no longer buying our barley. Italy is snubbing our durum wheat. India is putting tariffs on pulses. The farmers are paying the price for the Prime Minister's failures. We've asked for emergency debate 8 times on this, and Liberals have refused it 8 times. The government needs to be more engaged, creative, and aggressive in defending Canadian grains and oilseeds, according to the industry. When will the government do this? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture. We understand the concerns of canola farmers. For the past month and a half, the Minister has met with many farmers and industry representatives here in Ottawa, in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Canadian representatives are in talks with our Chinese colleagues to find a science-based solution. We sent a letter to China asking to send a delegation of high experts, and we're going to continue to defend the industry of canola. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the canola crisis, it is clear that the Prime Minister is letting China call the shots. His weak leadership and inaction is hurting Canadian farmers. One of my farmers has 400,000 bushels of canola in the bin, and it has lost $600,000 in value in the past few weeks. As the price of canola is driven down, farmers have no certainty as what they should plant in the future. This is a crisis. When will the Prime Minister actually stand up for our canola farmers?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. As I've already said, we understand the concerns of canola producers. Our government has established a working group with representatives from the industry and provincial partners. We sent a letter to China asking for the support of a delegation of experts. We're going to continue to defend the canola industry and to defend our very rigorous inspection system, which is one of the best in the world. The opposition party voted against the agricultural budget, I'd like to note.
River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, the time for working groups and letters is over. The canola crisis continues, with farmers across Canada paying for the Liberals' mistakes. Now, the Minister of Agriculture says she's seized with the issue, that this requires a scientific solution. Let's call a spade a spade. The Chinese do not have a pest problem with Canada's canola. They have a problem with this Liberal government. When will they finally stand up for canola farmers and start addressing this crisis with China?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs.
You know, I'm surprised the honourable member is justifying a foreign government action against Canadian farmers. It used to be when political parties debate internally for domestic policies, but we used to come together when a foreign government imposes actions against Canadian farmers. I ask the honourable member to join our government in standing up for Canadian farmers and defending our excellent and high-quality products as we resolve this issue.
The honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Mr. Speaker, steel producers and fabricators across the Greater Hamilton area have been feeling the pain for almost a year, and now they are strapped with a crippling carbon tax and the threat of the removal of the one market protection they've had. Those who rely on good quality Canadian steel are feeling the effects and are very concerned. Producers, fabricators, and steel workers need more than talk and photo ops from the Prime Minister. Why did the Prime Minister sign this new agreement without getting these tariffs removed?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will always stand up for Canadian workers and Canadian interests. Canada responded to the illegal U.S. measures with dollar-for-dollar tariffs of import of steel, aluminum, and other products from the U.S. As we work to completely repeal the U.S. tariffs, we recognize the potential impacts on Canadian businesses, workers, and communities. While Canada's countermeasures remain in place, we are providing targeted relief for Canadian manufacturers facing exceptional circumstances, like challenges around the lack of domestic supply. We're also imposing provisional safeguards on imports of 7 steel products that are causing or threatening harm to Canadian steel producers and workers because of increased foreign imports caused by the U.S. tariffs. We will remain steadfast in our support of the Canadian steel and aluminum industry. Thank you.
Honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Spring has finally come, at least we hope so. And with the warmer weather comes pleasure craft on the Richelieu River. To stop erosion of the riverbanks and to protect pleasure craft and respect neighboring inhabitants, we've been asking for better regulations for years. In 2016, I tabled a motion on this. Will the Liberals listen to the municipalities of the Richelieu Valley and the Chambly Basin and amend federal legislation to protect the Richelieu River?
Secretary to the Minister of Transportation.
Speaker, I'm happy to rise on this issue once again. I spoke to the House Leader in Parliament in question period just a few weeks ago on a similar issue. We directed the House Leader to funding that is available, and we encourage their constituents to apply for that funding. And if that member would also like to meet with me, I'd be happy to do that meeting as well.
Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, do you know what issues children and youth care the most about? The health of our planet and climate change. Unfortunately, we learned last week that Canada is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world average. Section 24 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Children recognizes the right of every child to live in a clean environment. Yet, there are no federal institutions to defend the rights and concerns of children. I proposed a solution to change this. Will the government support my bill to create a federal youth commissioner? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Families.
For this very good idea. It's one that we're exploring through appointments to various commissions and bodies within the department I represent. In fact, we had discussions about that today. We're looking to make sure that children's voices and the voice of youth are present when we deal with poverty, when we deal with housing, when we deal with all of the issues that affect children in this country. The member opposite has put forth a good motion. We'll be looking at that motion and coming back to the House with our position on it. Thank her for it.
Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals said they want to protect jobs in Quebec, even though they know very well that SNG jobs were not at stake and they interfered in the political system. In 2015, when the Liberals came to power, they did everything to hamper the Davie shipyard and to prevent it from building the Asterix, putting 1,000 people to work, which would have. Why did the Prime Minister want to cancel this contract and hurt Davie? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, our government is seeking to strengthen the Royal Navy and its capacities to serve Canadians. This was a major shipyard, and we recognize the expertise of this shipyard. The expertise the shipyard did have a contract, and even there was a recent one this fall that was given to Davie, and all shipyards have the work that they need, and all the jobs at the Davie shipyard in Quebec are being protected. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. In 2015, the Conservatives gave the Asterix contract to the to Davie shipyard, but the Liberals did everything to cancel this contract and to prevent the construction of the Asterix and to kill the project. Why are the Liberals doing everything they can to punish the whistleblower on this affair? Why? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I appreciate this question. I'd like to underscore that in this Norman affair, we're following the rule of law and all of the orders of the judge. We're cooperating with all the court orders. And once again, I'd like to underscore here in the House that's important to let the judge act independently. And now the Conservatives are asking us to intervene in this file. Well, this goes against the rule of law that we are following, that any other country should follow.
Melville.
Speaker, Vice Admiral Mark Norman is a 38-year, highly decorated, deeply respected member of the Canadian Forces. As Vice Chief of Defence Staff, he has served with honour and dignity. Today, he is trying to prove his innocence in another Liberal scandal. The Prime Minister is again undermining the rule of law, refusing to release documents that he has the right to receive to prove his case in court. Once again, the Prime Minister is abusing his office, manipulating these court proceedings. Why?
Well, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Speaker, with great respect, that is an absolute misconstruction of what is actually taking place. There is a court that is dealing with a third-party records application. We've heard the court order. We are cooperating with that court order as any government would. We provided the documents. It is now for a judge in the Ontario court to decide whether our cooperation has been sufficient or whether it is deficient. It is for a judge to determine this matter. It is not to be debated in the House of Commons, nor is it to be determined by a political actor. That is what the independence of the rule of law is all about. That is what I would urge the Conservatives to respect.
Bravo. The honourable member for Thunder Bay Rainy River.
Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People is a cornerstone of our government's relationship with Indigenous peoples. And in 2016, our government became a full supporter of the Declaration without qualification. Our government is moving forward on key legislative initiatives that support the implementation of the Declaration. We have also supported Bill C-262 as an important next step. Can the Parliamentary Secretary update this House on the status of this important legislative measure?
Good question. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Bill C-262 is a key step in implementing a United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Passed by the House last spring, it is now stalled in the other place as a result of conservative procedural delay tactics. Wow. While we have enormous respect for the independence and work of the other place, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and particularly this piece of legislation, cannot be subject to partisan and procedural games. I urge the Conservative members of the other place and the members in this House who are in their caucus to heed the unanimous motion passed by this House this week and stop their inexcusable delay tactics.
Bravo. Bravo. For Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, in November, the Prime Minister promised that he'd have a plan for saving jobs in Oshawa. Instead of saving jobs, we have seen more job losses announced in the automotive sector, this time in Windsor. The Prime Minister pretended to stand up for jobs at SNC-Lavalin to the point of political interference in a criminal trial. Those jobs weren't even at risk. Meanwhile, we stand to lose 15,000 plus jobs in Durham Region, and Windsor stands to lose over 1,500 jobs. Mr. Speaker, instead of just acting, why can't this Prime Minister act when there's a real crisis?
Hear, hear. Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, our government has always been committed to promoting and supporting the automotive sector and their families. We've invested millions in this sector, and we've created tens of thousands of jobs since we came to power. Some examples: 110,000 million to Cambridge. We've supported Guelph, and Hyundai installations also have been invested in. We're continuing to invest in the automotive sector so we can ensure we build the cars of the future.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Communities like those in my city of Brampton are in need to adapt to the effect of climate change. Reducing the impact of natural disaster is critical in keeping Canadians safe, supporting the strong economy and the middle class. Can the Minister update the House on what the government is doing to build climate resilience in the cities like Brampton? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for his question. Our government is committed to helping communities build the infrastructure they need for this century and help them better withstand climate change. That's why we're investing $2 billion over 10 years through the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. Our government was in Brampton last week to announce that we're investing over $22 million towards an erosion protection project that will protect the homes and businesses of residents in the entire region. This is a vitally important work, Mr. Speaker, and we look forward to continuing that partnership across Canada. Thank you very much.
Honourable member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, SNC-Lavalin, Arctic Surf Clam, and No Show in Vietnam. India Trip Sideshow, fundraising from the PMO, and Trans Mountain, no go. Secret fundraisers with Chinese billionaires, terrorists being millionaires, and Panama paper fundraising shares. Forgotten mansions, ethics sanctions, more No Chappelle stock sale, and veterans asking for too much, fail. Phoenix Pay, Island Vacay, investment flying far away, cash for access soiree, balanced budget, no way. Speaker, why do Canadians always have to pay?
Accountable Government House Leader.
I have to say that's probably the most support of the arts I've ever seen from a Conservative. So I think that is pretty impressive to see them coming along. And I know that member is concerned for his constituents, and I know that he's concerned about future generation, and he forgot to say the word environment, but I know it's on his mind, and I know he challenges the leader of the official opposition every day to come out with a climate plan. But I've got good news for his constituents. We are going to make sure that transitioning to a cleaner, greener economy is more affordable, and that's why constituents in his riding, constituents all across Ontario will be able to receive $307 for a family of 4, which will be more
the other member for Regina, Louvain.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Speaker ruled that he cannot enforce the Parliament of Canada Act rules for caucus expulsions, which are also not subject to judicial review. If neither the courts nor the Speaker uphold the law, party leaders are free to ignore it. A possible solution would be to empower an independent Attorney General separate from the Justice Minister to enforce the Parliament of Canada Act. Does the government agree?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
I want to thank the member for that thoughtful question. I just want to make sure that he knows that at our first caucus meeting, the caucus chair wrote the Speaker to inform you of the will of our caucus on these measures. And in regards to the role of the Attorney General, we know that Canadians expect and deserve to have faith in their institutions and the people who serve them. And that's exactly why when the Prime Minister observed the testimony that took place at the Justice Committee, he brought forward the Honourable Anne McClellan so that she could actually look into this matter and provide advice and guidance to the government. This information will also be available for future government when it comes to the dual role of the Minister of Justice as well as the Attorney General of Canada. I can assure him that we're taking it very seriously.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While BTB is developing the Rwanda Airport, the federal government is thinking about authorizing cuts to the air transport safety. It doesn't make sense to let NAV Canada cut assistance to the third largest airport in Quebec. It's dangerous and it hampers regional development. Will the minister listen to the business community and BTB, the airlines, pilots, local officials, and others who all want the flight information services at FSS Rwanda to be maintained? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Of our transportation system. Canadians can rest assured, that member can rest assured that we have one of the clearest, safest records in all of Canada. And when it comes to individual investments and individual decisions, we are making clear investments right across the country for the safety of our airports. We're seeing the results, and that member can go back to his constituents and safely say that we have one of the clearest safety records in the entire country, entire world, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government tabled its credits yesterday. These are the last spending authorizations before the elections. Almost all the initiatives in the last budget are in there, except for one big one, the $3.9 billion promised to supply management sector. This amount is not found in any of the financial tables of the budget. Can the government tell us where this $3.9 billion went? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. We've always been clear. We want to help supply management farmers, and we're going to provide them with just and fair compensation, and we intend to do so. We've always defended supply management. We always will do so, and that's not always been the case for the Conservatives. Thank you.
For question period, c'est fini pour la période de questions aujourd'hui. Un appel au règlement, l'honorable.
A point of order, the Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. A Damocles sword is hanging above the steel and aluminum workers. Their production will be affected in 2 weeks. Therefore, I think that if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent for the following motion. That, given that many of the 23,000 direct jobs and indirect jobs in the steel industry are at risk, and that many of our economic partners, like the European Union, protect their workers with permanent safeguard measures, the House urged the Minister of Finance to implement permanent safeguard measures for our steel industry immediately to avoid the deadline of April 27th, 2019. Does the Honourable Member have unanimous consent of the House to move the motion? Agreed. The House has heard the motion. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Carried.
Un appel au règlement.
Point of order, the honourable member for